Yo, what's going on? It's your boy Cool Ya P of the ShoPowSho. Before we get to this week's episode of the ShoPowSho, I want y'all to check out this amazing festival that I'll be collaborating with my folks over at the Mixed Asian Media Festival. Here we go right now. Check it out.
In 2017, we launched Hapa Mag, inspired by my blog, Miso Hapa.
For many of us, it has come to represent a space for us to express our mixed racial heritage with Asian or Pacific Islander ancestry.
To be Hapa is to be a part of a diverse and growing community with many perspectives.
In 2021, we made the decision to move to a broader future by renaming ourselves Mixed Asian Media, MAM for short.
In celebration of this re-identification, we present the first Mixed Asian Media Fest, MAM Fest, a glimpse of Mixed Asian and Pacific Islanders in their art forms, including art, film, theater, and dance.
In light of recent events, MAMFest will be an online event. However, we're hopeful that future years will allow us to meet in person and gather in physical space.
And have a creative project? Submit to MAMFest on filmfreeway.com.
Yo, what's going on? This is the NOC, the Nerds of Color, and we are back with another ShoPowSho. I am Kuya P, leader of the Holla Holla Homies in the Senate gang, and I'm back with the amazing Ates. You know, those Lechon ladies, those Dinaguang destroyers. Here we go, Kataphorric and Viva Valentina. What's up, ladies?
Yay. Hey, Patrick.
What up?
Good. Just trying to stay warm. It's cold out here on the East Coast. I know y'all had a little bit of snow this morning. I didn't, but it's just windy.
It was wild. I got to stay home all day, so.
Okay. All bundled up and all nice and warm. How about you, Kat?
It's different, which is different, right? That's different.
Yeah, you know, something.
I too had to stay.
All right.
Inside today. It was good.
Cool. Well, you know, it's these kind of times when you are at home, or at least for me, you can either bundle up with a good book or binge a movie or do research on a show that you're doing, like we all are doing here at the ShoPowSho. And that's kind of how I came across this amazing storyteller, if you will. He's an author, he's a writer, he's been doing a little bit of everything. He has a podcast that he does, and he gathers voices for that, and he's just in the mix of everything. He's into entertainment and representation. Shout out to the Brown Geeks, which is one of his groups that he puts down and just rocks it. And he's also a Star Trek fan. So all you Trekkie fans, he's got a special Star Trek story that I read that kind of really touched me because I've been there. We'll see if he'll get into that. But yeah, his name is Ryan Thomas Riddle. Please welcome Ryan Thomas Riddle to the show. Man, hey, here we go. There we go. What's going on, Ryan? Hey,
Yo, yo, yo.
a great thing of doing a show like this is meeting new people. We haven't yet to meet in person, but through the beauty of the internet and living in pandemic times, you can find and you know the whole. We were talking a little bit earlier. One of the great things of the show like this is and trying to put out, you know, just our representation as Filipinos, as brown geeks, is and you know that are in various niches of the world and community and discovering them for the first time. And you know, because we don't get that, you know, that's one of the hard things with the mainstream white dominated media is you know is that representation. And so that's the focus of the show, is to kind of build up and show that representation. So it's a pleasure to meet you, having done that research. Welcome, Ryan. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about doing this. You know, anything to discuss, you know, being Pinoy, Pinay, Filipinx, all those things. And I like, you know, like what you said is, you know, we're not, you know, like Filipinos tend to kind of get bucketed a lot in like this monolithic idea of the model minority and certain buckets of professions that you always kind of see us in or are associated with. And it's nice to see that there's a variety and that you guys are showcasing that variety even within these other niches like writing. There's different types of Filipino writers, there's different types of Filipino actors, there's different types of this and that, and it's not all one thing. We're not all just one big culture, even though that is the majority of the representation that we've had thus far, especially in the United States.
Yes. So thank you for what you're doing with the Brown Geeks and Avaz Media, and welcome to our ShoPowSho family. I'm going to pass it to Miss Viva Valentina, who kicks off our conversations. So Tina, hit them with it.
So we always want to know, where are you from? But like, where are you really from? And like, where are your parents from?
Okay. Yeah. I got it. So I'll start where I'm from. I'm originally from San Diego. In fact, that's where I am right now. Although San Francisco is really my home. Like that's where my heart really is. I lived in the Bay Area for almost a decade, working and living, and we can get into why I left and all that. It's part of something that Kuya P hinted at in terms of my Star Trek story type of thing.
Okay. I love the Bay Area.
But yeah, I love the Bay Area. I mean, San Francisco, I close my eyes and I can just see that city so much. Every inch of it, every piece of concrete, every tree, every scent, every sound. That city is just so alive in my head.
I feel
but
you.
I'm originally from San Diego. I'm originally from San Diego. I grew up in Paradise Hills, close to the cusp of National City. So very much Filipino-dominated Navy neighborhood. All right, all my friends were Filipino. All of our family friends were mostly Filipino, and a lot of us had dads that were in the Navy. So that's kind of like the San Diego kind of Filipino story, right? But in terms of my parents, I'm mestizo, so I'm only half Filipino.
We're the mestizo mafia over here.
Welcome to us. Yeah. We are the mestizo mafia.
The M&Ms are in the house.
Oh my god. Oh, that's adorable.
But my mom is from a little town called Donsol in the Bicol province. And Bicol is at the tip of Luzon, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes like 2 days to get there from Manila. Like you literally have to caravan to Bicol. I don't know, maybe they put in flights there since last I was in the Philippines, but the last time you had to get in a van and it took 2 days to get there. But she's from this little town called Donsol, which is actually really famous now as a tourist spot because of the whale sharks. They're very like a lot of like tourists and stuff go there to swim with the whale sharks. It's like a huge thing there now. At least when I went 10 years ago. But then she grew up mostly in Manila. because of some family history. My family, the Toledos, were well known in Bicol, and they had like there's buildings with the name on it. They've been in public service and stuff. But because of World War II, and because of some events that unfortunately led to the tragic death of my grandmother, my mom's mom, the family left Bicol, and so they sold their land and moved to Manila. So my mom primarily grew up in Manila, but then kind of went back for high school to Bicol. My dad is from Kentucky. He's a farm boy, an Irish farm boy. Just just white as bread. I don't know how to describe it. Really nice guy. But he met my mom while stationed in the Philippines. My mom was living with my aunt, whose husband, my uncle, was a Marine, and they were living in Subic Bay, and she was living there and working in the city. And how she met my dad is really funny. So my dad, being a sailor, an enlisted sailor at the time, you get liberty, so you go off ship and you want to go. You want to meet girls, right? I mean, come on. I mean, he's a sailor. He went to go meet a girl that. There's no way to.
I can neither confirm nor deny that as a former sailor.
yeah. I mean. That's, I have friends that are sailors. I didn't get into the Navy. That was not my path, but like a lot of, I know some sailors. Anyway,
we grew up in Norfolk. We know.
Yeah. See? And so he goes to this bar, and my mom does not drink. She does not drink. She cannot drink. She's deathly allergic to alcohol. If she drinks, it's bad news, right? But she went to this bar to meet a friend who worked at the bar, and these were one of those bars where they would get sailors to buy drinks for the girls and all that in those days. And so my dad thought my mom worked at the bar and was trying to buy her drinks, and my mom says he was pretty drunk at the time. But then from there they spent the entire night going to party and all this stuff, and then practically almost like 3 months or so later, they were engaged to be married. And the next thing
classic military story.
Met drunk, quick engagement, Filipino, got it.
Let's go.
Bingo.
Yeah.
I've got my, I know. She came to the States in 1974 and then had me in 1976. So, they got married like that. They're still together. They've been together, 47 years almost now.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm sure it's been 47 long years for my dad, as he would joke, but they love each other dearly. They're a very sweet couple, and, luckily, I have to say, during the pandemic, since I moved back to San Diego, I've been able to see them, and I haven't been.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Separated from them, which is nice.
Yeah.
The typical older son coming home to take care of the parents.
That's great. That's beautiful. Awesome. Thank you. Well, so thank you for sharing that. So they. So let's continue on the story. They fell in love, classic Filipino story, love story,
right?
In the military, and coming here to America. So you grew up. You were born in San Diego.
Yeah, I was born in San Diego. We actually
Balboa Hospital because they were Navy.
Balboa, yep, Balboa.
Hey, I'm Balboa Hospital too, bro.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the building I was born in no longer exists. But
yeah, probably the same. I was born in 1977.
Yeah,
you're 76. I'm 77, so I'm curious. Probably the same. Yeah.
Yeah, it's probably the same because they renovated the hospital and then they tore down the old buildings.
Okay.
So but yeah, Balboa Hospital. We had a brief stint in Chicago in the Great Lakes, like while my dad was stationed there for like almost a year.
Okay.
But I was like 3, so I don't remember anything except like a little bit of snow, and that's about it.
A little bit?
Just a little bit. All I had just vague memories of snow. Apparently my mom will tell her that, you know, she'll tell all these stories about me bundled up and like dropping me on the ice, and I have no memory of any of that. And then we moved back to San Diego for another year or two, and we moved to Hawaii. So I lived in Hawaii and during my kindergarten years for about 11 months.
Okay.
That I have better memories of, like, you know, raining a lot, going to school, getting coconuts literally from the front yard, because we were in naval housing and there were all these coconut trees. And so my mom would have my dad go up and get a coconut, and you know, she had like the little like coconut, whatever it is, to shave.
Oh, the shaver.
Yeah, the shaver. We had that up until like a few years, like a decade ago, when we finally got rid of it.
Funny.
It was always in the garage, and I'm like, why do we still have this? I don't have
That's awesome.
I see them in my Filipino cooking group.
They'll cut it open for you already, so you don't have to like do all this stuff. But yeah, we moved back to San Diego shortly after that, and I just went to elementary school here.
Okay.
Junior high, went to Morris High School.
So let's talk about those times, elementary, you know, young kid. What would your parents tell us about a young Ryan?
That I talk too much. Which my mom says that she used to have to pay me like 10 cents to shut me up as a kid. I don't know. I wish I knew. Invested it. But no, you know, my mom tells this funny story. So I later became a journalist, right? I became a reporter. And my mom says that when I was a kid, I would put on like my little blazer, and I'd walk up to the coffee table and take my like little crayon briefcase and everything and put out papers, and I'd tell my mom, "Hey mom, I'm going to tell you the news." And then I don't know, babble about probably what I watched on TV that day or what cartoons. But
okay, that's just adorable that you had a little blazer.
Yeah, that's so precious. I
couldn't get past that part.
The crayon briefcase, I think, is what got me. Like, it's full of important crayons.
Yeah,
majesty and everything.
Yeah, I have a picture about when I'm 10. I still have like a little blazer. I don't know why I kept.
Oh my god!
Throughout my childhood, I would always have a blazer, and now I would never want to wear a suit. So
I'm like, wait, what's hanging up behind you?
Wait, what is that behind you? Is that a blazer?
That is not a suit. That is a Starfleet uniform.
Oh yes. I love it.
Oh my god, that's so much better.
Actually, it's a Starfleet uniform, not a blazer.
So that's a Captain Kirk uniform. Yes, for all those nerds who are probably asking in the audience, it is screen accurate.
Well, we'll get into the Trek stuff. We'll get into the Trek.
We'll get into the Trek. Sorry, we'll stop teasing you now.
No, it's fine. You know, I was a talkative kid, very, very social, but I was also, I can remember a little bit. There was always this, like I always felt not necessarily an outsider, because all my friends were Filipino, right? I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood that was predominantly, it was Filipino, Latino, or Black. And so that was primarily the makeup of my friend groups, right? But because I liked Star Trek as a kid, that kind of made me the odd man out growing up. Star Wars was the thing. You were cool if you liked Star Wars. You were a nerd, and this is when nerd was bad, you know, if you liked Star Trek. I don't know why, but that's the way it was back in the early 80s, you know, and going to elementary school. I can vividly remember this group of kids were the neighborhood kids. They wanted to play Star Wars. They wanted to play Return of the Jedi, which is the big movie at the time. and they wanted me to play Jabba the Hutt. And I was like, no, screw you. Like, I was a little chubby kid at the time. I said, screw you. I'm going to go play Star Trek where I can be Captain Kirk, and I don't have to be Jabba the Hutt. I can be whoever I want to be, right? I don't have to. I don't have to be the fat, gross alien. So, but I mean, growing up, I knew that even then that I wanted to do something creative, right? That's really like, I can remember I would use my mom's typewriter and I would type on it badly, and all these bad, like, fan fiction-y type of things, Superman stories or, whatever. And then I would tell my friends stories, also bad fanfic type of stuff, right? On the playground. So I knew I wanted to do something creative. And then I would also draw. And then junior high, I was kind of at that point where, like, that's when I really got the bug, right? That I knew I wanted to do something creative, that I didn't want to do the stereotypical things, right? Because around junior high and around high school, that's when parents start to pressure you academically, and try to push you in a direction. I was very fortunate that my parents weren't as strict as some of my friends that would cry if they got like a B on a test, that type of thing, right? So I didn't have my parents weren't like very strict, and probably because I did do okay scholastically. Like, I always got A's and B's. I didn't really need a lot of monitoring in terms of being a student. But this was when I really got into the writing part, right? This is when I really started. I want to do something writing. I want to do write and draw comic books, or I want to write TV, or I want to write a book. I don't know what it is, right? And then I got into journalism in junior high, or creative writing in junior high. I took a creative writing class in 8th grade because I was writing these short stories in 7th grade. And then my teacher noticed. She goes, "Oh, we have a creative writing class. Why don't you take that?" And then the teacher, Mr. Roberts, saw that I enjoyed writing like fan fiction, Star Trek stories, right? And he's like, "Well, have you thought about maybe writing scripts, like TV scripts?" I said, "Oh, you can do that? I didn't know that you that doesn't seem like, who, me? This little hood rat from Paradise Hills? I can write TV? I can do these things?"
Yeah.
It was the first time that bug kind of got into my ear.
That's cool.
And he gave me this little booklet that showed you just basically the format. I actually still have it somewhere. I kept it all these years. Yeah, and I actually found it in the garage while I was cleaning up the garage. I was like, "Oh, I still have this." So that's what got me interested into this screenwriting. And I would write. I wrote a couple of things in high school, and then in early community college. But it didn't stick as much, right? Because then by the time I got to high school, I got into journalism. I got into the high school newspaper, the Morse Code, right? And I'm very proud that I got a Letterman's letter, like the M, not for sports, but for journalism.
For academics. For academics.
Dirty.
Yes.
It's still achievement.
Yeah. All right. And that's when the journalism got me. That's when I finally really because growing up, I had two heroes fictionally, right? Which is Captain Kirk, which if you read my Twitter, I talk about him endlessly. and then Superman. But it wasn't just the aspect of Superman, like the S and the cape and like all the flying and stuff. But it was also the Clark Kent aspect. The Clark Kent aspect was the thing that really got me into those stories, and that you could tell these stories about different people, and you could meet different people, and you could talk to them and interview them, and just like I enjoyed that. Like that aspect got into me. So by the time I was in high school, that's when I thought seriously that I want to be a reporter, but definitely I wanted to be a writer no matter what. And the course that, and I was taking AP classes too, like you know, I was doing what my mom asked me to do, science, math, all the things that I have no patience for, that I can do, but I'm not great at, right? To this day, I will never forget sitting in lab going like, why am I doing the same thing over and over again and trying to replicate it? So I just fudge all the rest of my results just so I could finish my homework. Like, whatever. And then turn it in and like get a passing grade just by the skin of my teeth. But that's when I said to my mom, I go, Mom, I think I want to be a writer. I don't want to be a doctor. Like,
oh no.
What? You want to be a what? And then I swear to God, she doesn't remember this, but these are the exact words that came out of her mouth. You're going to starve for the rest of your life.
Oh my God!
Engraved in your memory bank forever.
In my memory. Like just like burned, sizzled right there.
Oh my gosh.
To this day, I still remember it. And I just remember her look of sheer and utter disappointment. Like, I did not come to this country to give you a better life. For you to go and screw up my plans.
Oh my gosh. I've heard something very similar to that from my mom. That's insane. Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? Because you're also into like acting and writing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You got that like lecture, right? It's not just a talk, it's a lecture. It's like a long lecture of like, how can you think about that? You're screwing up your life. You're never going to be this. You're never going to be that. You're going to be poor. You're never going to have a home. You're never going to have a family. It just goes on.
Yeah.
It's like tell them you want to be in the arts, and it's like a nuclear explosion, and it's the worst possible outcome for your life.
Yeah.
You know?
That's on the ShoPowSho bingo sheet. That.
Yeah.
Yeah, the parental disapproval.
Yeah.
All right, so let's take a pause at that point, and how you're choosing, you know, and when you went off to college. I would like to get into some of the Filipino insight aspect of it, and you being a mestizo and being part of a mixed family. How was it growing up as a mixed kid and learning about your culture and with your mother and your father and that difference, which mirrors us, because we're always talking about our mixed kid journey. Can you talk about
mixed
that?
kid problems.
Yeah. Hashtag mixed kid problems.
Oh my God, I want that on a t-shirt. Mixed
Right?
You know, hey, write that down, Tina. We need to put that on the shirt.
I love you merch ideas, guys. You gotta have the merch.
We're working on it. We're working on it.
No, I growing up, I was so ingrained in it. It didn't even occur to me that I was not anything but Filipino, right? And it's the box I still check to this day when I'm like asked to fill out some form. I don't fill in mixed. I fill in, if they have a box for Filipino, that's what I check.
I was about to say, do they have boxes for Filipino?
not back in the day, but they do now. At least in California, they do.
Yeah, West Coast, not over here. Yeah.
Yeah. In other places, you got to fill out Pac Islander or Asian American, right? But my mom actually, like she talked to me in Tagalog when I was a kid. I was able to talk a little bit in Tagalog as a child. And then she stopped. It just stopped one day. Not because my dad didn't want me to learn. My dad's very much about being accepting of the Filipino culture and all of this. I've heard horror stories from other mestizo kids or friends of mine where their dads were like, no, like fish, no Filipino food, no, stuff like that. But my dad was very much, he eats chicken adobo, he eats rice. He won't eat fish, but there's limits. At least not bungos. He won't eat bungos. But my mom cooked Filipino food growing up, so I was just always something around. But like I said, my mom stopped speaking to me in Tagalog. She used to like sing me lullabies in Tagalog and all this stuff. And it was because she didn't want me, like a lot of like Filipino parents, they want their kids to assimilate, right? They want them to be successful in school. So they don't want them any sort of linguistic hang up, right? Or accent. I think that was my mom's fear. It was like I'd have like an accent, or I wouldn't, be able to whatever that reasoning was, but it was because, she wanted me to be more assimilated, and she stopped, which I regret. I would really love to be fluent in Tagalog. I can understand bits and pieces here. I can say, one or two phrases. I can say all the curse words. Those are the first things you learn as a teenager, especially when it comes right after your name. I'm like, oh, I'm in trouble.
Yes.
I thought that was part of my name for years. You think that's not my name? That means something else? No. But it was very much part of who I was. It was never like a question. I think where it became a question growing up was from other people's perspectives, right? When I would say, oh, I'm Filipino. And they're like, oh, you don't look Filipino. I've heard that all my life growing up. Oh, you don't look Filipino. Well, I don't know. I look in the mirror. I think I look Filipino, right? Right? It's just, that was always like the first thing someone would say if I said I was Filipino. I remember I was having lunch with someone in high school that I just met. I hadn't known for that long, who was Filipina. And she goes, you know what? You don't turn red for a white guy when you laugh. And I was like, well, I'm only half white.
That's so specific.
Yeah.
I know. I was like, what? I understood growing up here because I do have a very more stronger looking Hispanic features, right? Or what would typically be thought of as Hispanic. And growing up in San Diego, if I got, I would always get Latino or Mexican or Hispanic, and I go, oh, well, that makes sense, right? But when I would say I'm Filipino, sometimes I'd get like,
Are you sure?
Like, are you sure? I go, I'm pretty sure. I mean, my mom has, chanelas and all this stuff, so I'm pretty sure. We have the elephant. I think that's like, we don't have the spoons and the fork, but we have the other things. And so I'm pretty sure. But yeah, it always was like people would question whether or not I was Filipino when they would first learn. And that was the only time where I would feel that I was sort of an outsider, that I felt like odd man out. But like I said, like a bunch of my friends were Filipinos, so it was just like we were just all in the same group together. Our like going to their houses. We all kind of spoke the same languages. We all went to the same places. We'd all go to the same Filipino markets and the same Filipino stores, and so it was just all part of just my childhood. And then growing up in Paradise Hills and National City, which is like Little Manila in San Diego, or at least that's where the original concentration of Filipinos were. It's just like every day. It's just, that's who I was. It's where I grew up. I didn't have any sort of second thoughts. It's like when I tell people like that are from San Diego, but not from where I grew up. And I say like, oh, I grew up in Paradise Hills. They're like, oh my God, you survived. I'm like, it's not that bad. I never thought of it as, that was just where I grew up. I never thought of it as anything less than or more than it was. It was just the place I grew up. I didn't think of it as a bad neighborhood or a good neighborhood. It was just my neighborhood, right? And that's the same way I feel about being Filipino. It's just, that's who I am. That's part of who I am. I don't think about it much. I don't question it much. It's just part of who I am. And always when it's been about, when I've ever felt outsider, it has always been from an outsider's perspective, trying to imprint something else upon me, right? Like either I'm not Filipino or not Filipino enough, or I'm somehow different, right? Like when I first went to the Philippines, that's when I started feeling a little more like a little taken aback, because there's an expectation that if you look like this, if you are a mestizo or mestiza, you're going to be on TV or something, right? Or you're somehow more special than the rest of the people. And and that puts me in an uncomfortable place, because I don't see myself as any more or any less than any other human being. They're also people, right? So
we gotta have you come back for our mestizo standards of beauty episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh, yeah. I have so much to say.
I'm like, making a note.
I never knew you could get your skin whitened. How? So yeah, it's just it's always been, that's the only time where it's made me feel like an outsider. But within my core group of friends, within my family, I'm nothing more than just another Filipino, and that this is just part of my life, right? The same foods, the same culture, the same things, and my mom will even admit, she goes like, I probably know more than she does about Filipino history and Filipino art and Filipino, this and that, because I was in Samahan and all these other groups, in college. So I was, I totally immersed myself into it, and I never had a question of identity growing up, in terms of who I was ethnically, right? Growing up, there was always a question of sexuality, right? That was the struggle I really had. It didn't really have anything to do with I guess it does technically have a little bit to do with my Filipino-ness, because growing up in the 80s and a teenager in the 90s, and during that time, being gay was used as a derogatory term. Growing up, right? Oh man, that's so gay. You're so gay. You're this, that, right? It was used to berate you, and I was a little sensitive as a child, and a little more. I want to say, like feminine or anything like that, but just more sensitive and more aware, and so that kind of gets you to be called a lot of really harmful names, right? And usually it's tied to that idea of you being gay. And then also, I felt very uncomfortable because I didn't know how to process these feelings, especially in junior high and high school. I couldn't understand why I was attracted to not only girls, but also boys. And I couldn't understand that whole dynamic. And that being, at the time, still being a good Catholic kid,
there it is.
going to church, going to catechism, you're taught that this is not a good thing to be, or it's sort of processed to it's not. And then there's that pressure from unintentionally from my mom, because she wasn't aware that this was a battle that I was going through, but it made me a little more guarded with it, right? I'm going to eventually get married and I'm going to give her grandkids, right? So that was really where I struggled. And that's really where the Filipino side of it came from, because there's this, you don't want to be a more of a parental disappointment, right? Like, I already want to be a writer, to come out as queer on top of that. Wow, that's gonna really screw up her life. No. And I did take that to heart for decades. I did not let her know, or my immediate family know, for quite some time, because of that. I always thought, like, if my mom went to her grave not knowing that I was no longer Catholic, and that I was queer, that as long as she died happy, thinking she had the son she had, right? That was just how I used to think about those things, because I didn't want to disappoint her on another level.
Right.
And that's where the Filipino growing up Filipino was more difficult for me. It had nothing to do with the culture. It had nothing to do with the identity part. It had everything to do with being the person I am, actually, the queerness, and then also wanting a different sort of life and career path for myself that my mother did not foresee for me or want for me, right? So that's where that's where it really became more difficult for me.
Wow.
So when did you start coming to terms with it and kind of, I guess, exploring the side of you and like letting it out?
Yeah, it took college. It really took late college, because early college I was just this has got to be, no one's got to know, or I don't even want to give myself that ability to explore that side of me, right? And then I slowly started, because of a group of friends of mine, a good friend of mine, Joey and Yulisa, and this group of people that I was in Samahan with, finally, slowly allowed me to explore some of that side of me, because we were going out to like Hillcrest, which is the gay neighborhood here in San Diego, and going to like some of the bars and clubs there. But that's when I first started, and then in my mid 20s is when I really started exploring it. But I was, and I still date along the spectrum of genders and sexual identities and all of that. I don't really see myself as one or the other, like strongly, right?
No, but I can imagine that's such a crazy like current to navigate, especially like coming out of like the culture and kind of like feeling like I can't really be myself, but then trying to come to terms with it, and then trying to just again explore and find like what you mentioned buckets before. It's like, do I now have to put myself in a bucket, and
yeah,
I don't think you have to.
No, and I mean that's where it took me 20 years to get to that place, because it's usually like, it was like, okay, I like this, I like that, kind of like this, kind of, and then slowly exploring those different things, dating different people. And it wasn't, I actually really did not fully, I don't think, come to terms with it until I moved to the Bay Area, until I moved to San Francisco.
So did you go to college in San Diego?
I did.
Okay. So you couldn't get away. That's why I was kind of curious. Like, you can explore, like a lot of people explore themselves in college, but because you were so close to home, you probably weren't able to do that then, I'm assuming.
Yeah, because my dad worked overseas, right? First in the Navy, and then being the eldest, having a brother that was 10 years younger than me. So when it came time to college, my dad was actually overseas as a contractor. Military contractor, so he was gone for like 3 or 4 years, and he was gone for a year at a time. Like he'd come home for a month and then go back, and so I had to stay in San Diego. I didn't really have a choice but to go to college in San Diego because I had to stay with my mom. And it wasn't until the last year of college when my dad moved back and started working here that I was able to at least live the last year of college in my own apartment. But I went from high school to Mesa College, which is a community college, and at that time I was still trying to placate my mother. I was like, okay, I'll placate her by taking a lot of science classes. Maybe I'll go to UCSD and go be like some biologist or some like whatever. And then I was like, nope, can't do it. Can't do chemistry, can't do physics. I hate lab work. I want to be a writer. And at the time, my only goal was to be a professional writer. By that, I just meant getting paid to write. It was just that basic. I didn't have any other ambition to be famous, to anything. I just wanted to prove my mom wrong that I could make money writing. That's all I wanted to do. And so I when I went to San Diego State, I started working on journalism and taking classes and getting my degree in that. And then I got a backup degree or a minor in history as a backup to become a teacher if I needed to or whatnot. And it was in college that actually, funny enough, that's when really a lot of Filipino-ness got cemented for me.
Mentioned that
I mean,
you
not
were
that
in
it was-
clubs and stuff.
I did. I was in Andres Bonifacio Samahan, which was the San Diego State Filipino Student Association organization, and I was an officer. I was in it for 3 of the 4 years that I was at state, because the first year I was not a part of it. But my friend Jonelle, he conned me into joining, because he said and we used to joke. I call him Junjun because he hates that, because it's like a Filipino nickname that he grew up with.
That's cute.
I call him Junjun, and then he calls me Kuya, and I'm like not even older than him, but he does it to me like, oh, but you're like 6 months older than me, so I'm gonna call you Kuya. I'm like, oh shit. And so it became like an in joke, and then that's kind of like it turned into like that's how we talk to each other. But he conned me into getting. He goes like, hey, I got to do PCN. Like, I got to do this Filipino culture night. Like, I'm the coordinator. I want to do something spectacular. It was like the 100th anniversary of the 100th, 200th anniversary, 200th of 100, 150. Anyway, whatever. It was the anniversary of the Philippine independence. I can't remember what the years were. I'm in my 40s. My memory's going.
You're Kuya now.
Yeah, I am literally a Kuya now. I'm gonna be a Lolo soon, probably.
Skip Tito altogether.
Yeah, I know they're all. But he says, I want to do this thing based on Jose Rizal's novel. I want to do this like play, and I know you write, and I'd like you to write the play version of Noli Me Tangere, which was the novel that inspired all the revolutionaries, right? It inspired Bonifacio, it inspired Aguinaldo. It's why they created the Katipunan, which I'm probably butchering because it's been years since I've had to say that. And it was the thing that sparked the revolution. And it's where we get all of our soap opera tropes in the Philippines, to be honest. It can be all sourced to Nole. The mestizo heir, the mestiza bride, the love triangles, all of that can be that. It's all in that book, really. It very much reads like a Filipino soap opera. But I wrote the play version, and it was my first play. And I fought like cats and dogs. I was always the contrarian, or the, I don't know, what is the country? Well, I was always bucking against tradition. I'm very, when it comes to like writing and art and all that, I have very, very clear visions and ideas of what I want. And well, back then I didn't have the maturity or the skill set to easily know when to fight and when not to fight, and when to compromise, and when to, because you get a bunch of Filipinos together and they're gonna fight over everything because we're very like, there's a lot of headstrongness in a group like that everyone wants to have their say. And I don't like art by committee. I hate art by committee. So I fought, I would yell it, we would just do smackdown fights over the vision of this play. But we got it done, and it was a great deal of fun. I actually had to end up being the lead actor as well and direct it because of a few like snafus.
That's what your headstrong. That's what you got. That's what you first brought you.
Like, I did not want
I'll
to
do it myself.
It wasn't even that. I wish it were that. Because I did not want to be on stage. So if, it was like a cascade of events happened, right? The lead actor that was supposed to be the lead came down from New York, and he sucked. Nice guy, but he tanked. Like he did not have any chemistry with the lead actress, which was very important because there's this like love story there that really had to play off. And they had no chemistry, and she didn't like him, and she didn't want to work with him. She couldn't like. So then he's like, well, I don't know what to do, but you know the line, so can you do it? I was like, oh, all right. So I did it, and then like it became like, oh, the person who's going to direct it wasn't able to direct it, so I had to direct it too. But it was one of the funnest experiences in my life. A lot of fights, a lot of this. A very ambitious play for a PCN, right? And then always having to fit in those, I don't know if PCNs are like this anymore, but back in the day, there used to be, it was like a huge program, like this huge program with like, there was a talent show, which I didn't understand why there was a talent show. And then there was the main show, and then you had to fit in all the cultural dances.
And then, I've been to one of those. Big college production of it all.
It just was like, and like I was like amazed that we were managed to get it under 3 hours. Did not have much luck when I was the PCN coordinator the next year. And then I wrote it and all that. I did not star in it this time. I have my limits. I always tell people I only act when it becomes absolutely necessary. I've never really had an interest in acting, but all the times that I've had to be an actor have always been because it's a need that has to be met.
Just got to put actor by necessity on your CV. Like
yeah,
that's
actor by necessity. Exactly. Here's my SAG card, actor by necessity, right?
Call me in emergencies. Wow.
Yeah. Call me if you need an emergency actor.
So what brought you to the Bay Area then? So you graduated with your degrees.
I graduated with my degree. I spent some time in LA in between San Diego and the Bay Area. So I got my master's degree actually in creative writing. I went to a college in LA called Otis. And I have much, it was a good experience. I fought with the program a lot. I don't think that I'm like this like guy that always fights, but apparently I am because I always had fight.
Running theme here.
Running theme, right? Even when I worked in TV news, I fought with management all the time. I fought with my program chair all the time at Otis. I had a little bit of a kerfuffle with my journalism chair I was a little bit more like headstrong and angrier in my younger days, right? I'd like to think that I'm a little more tempered now, although my friends will probably disagree. But I went to Otis, and actually I did not set out to just solely write about Filipino experiences. When I first thought about being a writer, that didn't occur to me that that's something I should write about, right? I just wanted to write stories, good, bad, indifferent, and it didn't really occur to me that I would have to have a Filipino element in it. But that's what resonated with people. I kind of got pigeonholed, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I kind of got pigeonholed into being like the Filipino writer. You're the Filipino writer. You're going to write about Filipino things. You're the Filipino writer. That's what you're going to write. And I allowed myself to be pigeonholed. I will admit, I didn't fight it, right? I just kind of like, I'm Filipino. Yeah, I should write about Filipino things. And that is certainly a theme in my work to this day. But I like to try to write a variety of things that are not just, about that. But I wrote this really bad novel in my MFA program, like really bad, like first novel, really bad. It's in my closet right here in my office room here. It's in a shoebox too, never to be taken out, and it's
really tucked away.
Yeah, literally tucked away. The writing is very I don't know. It's not who I am today, but you could see like it was very much influenced by all the writing that I had been reading at the time. And at the time, I didn't know that I wanted to write a novel. I got my MFA because I wanted to be a better writer. And that's when I really knew I really wanted to do this professionally. I wanted to make a go of it. I wanted to do this by any means necessary. And I thought at the time having a degree would help that, because I'd be in a space where I could actually take the time to learn the craft better. And I did. And I had some great experiences. One of my best friends came out of that program to this day, Deb Smith. I talk to her all the time. Like some bad experiences, especially associated with being Filipino. I was in a class. I had a class with a professor who, white, blonde hair, blue-eyed, and we were reading all this literature. They called it the literature evil, but it was really a really bad. I don't know. I just found it very off-putting literature. It was like very sadistic. It was very, it was just very degrading literature. I did not feel that I was learning anything from it. And one time in class, I had actually voiced that in class to the professor. I said, I'm not really connecting with this material. I just find it very, troubling. I don't find it's communicating anything else. And to be honest, it's written by a bunch of dead privileged people in Europe acting out very disturbing fantasies. And I did not want to read that. And I'm far from a prude, and I'm far from, I write about some dark stuff too in my work. But this was just, for me, it was just a little too much. And I had voiced that in class, and he actually looked at me and he said, "Ryan, you've got to learn to embrace the other." And I was like, what does that mean? Like, what does that mean? That's kind of insulting. I was really taken aback. I wasn't able to vocalize it at the time, but I looked around and I go, does this guy, does he not see the color of my skin? Does he not see who I am? I've been other all my life. Granted, I grew up mainly around other Filipinos, but like in the larger context of the world, in work, in predominantly white spaces, I am another. Like I don't know what you're talking about, dude. Like embrace what? Embrace who I am. I already have done that. So it's very like an off-putting experience, and then to be labeled as just being the Filipino writer, and I ended up writing a novel about the Philippines, and a really bad novel at that. I'm not Jessica Hagedorn by any means. I'm not writing Dog Eaters, even though I tried to write my own Dog Eaters book. And it comes across as that. It comes across as a mestizo from San Diego trying to write about poor people in the Philippines, and it just does not come across as authentic. And I have, on reflection, I have much angst about that novel for what I was trying to do. Like, who am I to talk about people growing up in Tondo or in the Manila North Cemetery, the squatters who live there, who take care of the mausoleums? Who am I to write those things? Because I'm not that person. And and I look at it now, and I kind of regret. I regret writing it, to be honest. It just doesn't feel real. And it's not that I don't believe you have to write what you know. And I don't think you necessarily have to be pigeonholed into writing only your experiences and not being able to comment on larger things. But there's a point when there's an authenticity that comes across. And it made me feel no better than some of the literature that we were reading in class that had a colonial imperialistic bent. And so when I look upon that work that I did in that program, that's how it comes across to me. I feel like the Filipino things that I'm writing about now feel more authentic, not only because it's rooted in some of my own experience, but also because I've lived a little bit longer than when I had written that piece. But now it's in a closet.
Wow, that hit me hard because
Right.
damn, that's real talk as a writer. And yeah, like we've talked and we've joked and you've listened to, if you've heard the show before, but like I've joked with the Ates, I want to do the Battle of Mactan story as a big one of the, when I can have a great big budget, if I make it get successful in Hollywood, I want to the Filipino Black Panther, which is the Battle of Mactan. But at the same time, a part of me, as I haven't started on the screenplay yet. It's just it's a goal of mine just to tell our stories. But a problem I have is, again, I grew up learning American history. I've been having to teach myself and and research on my own. But it's that authenticity that you just said that, like, I don't feel I'm worthy to tell that story in a way,
And I think you can. I just think you have to surround yourself. And at the time I did not, right? You have to surround yourself with advisors and people that can help you, like whether they're Filipino history professors or just interviewing people. And that was my mistake when I wrote that novel. Even though I went to the Philippines to research some of it, I did not interview people. That was my biggest regret because I was afraid, and especially when you go to the Philippines, your mom's like in your ear, like, don't talk to people, don't do this, don't do that, be careful, don't go here, you're going to go here, you're going to get kidnapped, you're mestizo, which is not true, like I felt very safe in Manila every time I've gone, but your parents are going to be parents and worry. But I made the mistake, whereas I did not reach out for the right type of advisors. And honestly, I don't know if I'd go back to write that story. But now that you mentioned it, there is like a couple of Filipino American stories that I would want to tell. Like I would love to tell the story of the Manongs in San Francisco, right? Who lived in Manila town before the city tore it all up, right? And forced them all out, But I think like you just have to be aware of that. And these are things that I try to be aware of now as the writer I am is this authentic? Am I bringing a level of authenticity? And also, am I telling a story or am I exploiting a story?
Mm-hmm.
And I go through this with almost everything I do because I've just finished writing a noir script that kind of goes into the darker side of both being Filipino and gay or being mixed race and gay with drugs and all this stuff. So it's like always in the back of my head, should I be telling this story? But then at the same time, I also don't want to just tell happy-go-lucky stories that kind of obfuscate that there is also struggles and a darker edge and a darker side to just being human, regardless of whether you're Filipino and gay or if you're, white and gay or whatever it is, right? Or, Latino and lesbian or whatever, there's always going to be like push and pull. And I think that we have to have a wider breadth of representation, right? In terms of what those stories are, right? I think there should be. I get like the points that artists like or gay artists like Dan Levy make about like, well, we need more like, happy ending gay stories because we always have these tragic stories. And I get that because it's like disproportionate, right? But at the same time, I also want to feel like I also still want to tell those stories because I've had experiences that make me want to tell those stories because of the things I've seen in my own life and in the places I've been, both as a Filipino and as a queer. And I don't want to kind of pitch, but I still have those nagging questions. And I think that arises from the experience of writing that novel and then also becoming more of a self-aware artist, or at least becoming more aware of the impact of how work can be perceived on a larger stage.
I think that's very interesting because we've had a few guests on who kind of imposter syndrome is one of our like bingo card squares. And even for people, I mean, we've interviewed guests who were born, in the Philippines, who grew up in the Philippines, who are 100% Filipino, and they will still say, well, because I've lived in America, or because I've had these experiences, or because I, didn't go to college, or I didn't study my culture, or I don't speak Tagalog fluently, or I only speak Tagalog and I don't speak Ilocana, that they are somehow like not Filipino enough. Like what is the definition of being like Filipino enough to tell a Filipino story? And I think that we have a big issue in the community as far as like entitlement to our own culture. Like what are we allowed to do? And you know what? That's one thing that we could learn from white people, because they're so into, I am 175th Irish, and so I'm going to go out and St. Patty's Day it up. Like I really feel like that's something that we
don't
as
come
people
for me
should have. Oh yeah, I did. Right in the eyes. And we should learn to embrace our, like, I guess, cultural entitlement.
Yeah, that is interesting, because I think, I had this Filipino professor in college, and he did this exercise. And he wrote this thing like, Filipinos blank more than blank, right? And all of us were like all of us, we're in the class going, what does he mean by that? Like blank. And so like, we were coming up with all these different things, right? I don't know, whatever they were. But what he was trying to get us to say was, Filipinos divide more than they unite. Because he was talking, not only was he talking like about the socio-political, but just that Filipinos have a tendency to they become tribal sometimes, right? Like overly tribal, right? You're from Bicol, so you are Bicolano, so you're only Bicolano, and you've got to be in the Bicolano Association, you got to be this, and you're from Cavite, so you're in the Cavite Association in this, and then there becomes this kind of odd one-upmanship, right? And that's what he was getting at, is that, and I think that's where that imposter syndrome sort of comes from, is this tendency for us to, at least from what I've seen, not all Filipinos are like this. I don't want to make any blanket statements because it's, I don't believe that you can generalize, right? But I think there's part of that imposter syndrome comes from like, we don't do it consciously, I don't think, because I know I've done it. Oh, you don't eat kare-kare with tribe? That's not Filipino enough, right? We do these little things that come out of our mouths and we don't realize it, where we begin to question every one of our, me growing up, for example. Oh, you don't look Filipino. And we don't think about how harmful that could be to one's identity as a Filipino, right? How that can make us question, oh, maybe I'm not Filipino enough. Maybe I'm not this, I'm not that. Oh, I don't speak Tagalog. Or in my mom's case, my mom has imposter syndrome too. She talks to our relatives and all of them speak Bicolano and she does not. Because she grew up in Manila, so she speaks mostly Tagalog. And she feels like, oh, I can't, I feel bad. I don't understand. I'm not. But you're still from Bicol. You're still Bicolano. It's like, it doesn't change just because you can't engage them on that level, right? But I think that's where that imposter syndrome starts to leak in or come from. We'll always question each other about how authentic we are, right?
Tribal.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, I agree.
It's like when you start putting people into buckets, we all start to become crabs in buckets.
Woo.
Yeah.
There's some deep shit right here. That was some real talk.
We need to get off on some deep tribal stuff, but
yeah.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
So let's get into, like, you earning your MFA, you're out of college, and now you're pursuing your writing career, journalism, and you know, and in San Francisco.
Right. So I actually moved up because when I got out of my MFA, it was 2008, and that's when, you know, the economy tanked. So I had to leave LA because I couldn't get a job in LA. And at the time, I didn't think to me, try to get a job in Hollywood. You know, at the time, because at the time I thought I still had that lofty goal that I was going to write some great American Filipino novel or whatever, Filipino American novel. But I moved to the Bay Area because I got a teaching job to teach little kids creative writing, which was a great, stressful job, but it was, you know, it was fun. It was, I was in my early 30s. It was the first time I moved away. I was living in like this tiny studio apartment in San Jose, making $600 a week, which is nothing when you live in the Bay Area, you know, and like, I lived like a bohemian lifestyle. I had no furniture. I had an air mattress. I had my laptop. I'd write, I'd eat grapes and drink $2 Chuck and cheese from Trader Joe's.
It's like $3 Chuck now. I don't even think it's $2 or $3 Chuck now. It's
yeah, it's like $3.99 now, bro.
Yeah, $4 Chuck.
$4 Chuck.
$4 Chuck. Jesus. Man,
the economy.
The economy. But yeah, so, you know, like I was teaching them and, you know, it took a while. And then finally I got a job in journalism. It took about, I think I was living there for a year or two. And I got a job at the Daily Post in Palo Alto, the Palo Alto Daily Post. And it was just a great little paper. It was a stressful job. I won't lie. It was hard. I never wanted to be in TV, even though I briefly worked for NBC News in San Diego. And thankfully that did not stick. But I always wanted to work in newspapers, and I was working at this local paper, and it was one of those freebie papers, right? But it was great. I learned a lot. I covered everything from politics, local politics, state politics, high-speed rail, crime, breaking news, the whole gamut. You know, I went to the city council meetings. I did it all. And I did investigative journalism, and I was also a columnist. For a brief time, I was a columnist before I left. I think for about the last year, I was a columnist, where I would talk about politics, and which was funny because, and I think this is where like a lot of my political sort of like advocacy came out, was being a columnist, because at the time I was the liberal columnist at the paper, because it was run by a libertarian, was the owner of the paper, was the editor of the paper. And that very nice guy. He taught me a lot about writing, taught me about journalism. But he never let his politics get in the way of the journalism aspect, the actual reporting aspect. It would show up in his columns, but it wouldn't show up in the paper itself, right? Which I had to admire, right? And then he made me a columnist. Yeah, he knew there was a time and place. And he made that distinction very clear to us. And he had very strict rules on objective reporting, which I also admire. He had very strict rules. And these were things that I carried on in anything I did after. If it's a direct quote, if it's in quotes, it has to be 100% what that person said. It has to be what that person said. If you are going to quote someone, it has to be. You can't make up a quote. I mean, if you don't have the exact quote, paraphrase it, but do not put it in direct quotes unless it's 100% what they said. Very strict rule. No off the record. This is where I learned not to go off the record, because off the record is misused, not only by reporters but by sources, and also like you interview someone and they say like at the end, they're like, oh, it's off the record. I go, well, that's not how this works. We have to discuss it. You have to tell me that you don't want to go on the record in the beginning, but you've already agreed to be interviewed by me after I identified who, there's this all, it can get murky. So having that rule really made me a better reporter because I was able to just be like, I don't go off the record unless you're giving me a tip and that I can go, research and get someone else on the record, right? But it was very like maddening work. I was not making a great deal of money. I was making under 40K, which in the Bay Area is not even close to the poverty line. Not even close. And even though I love the work, the hours were like from 1 to sometimes 1 in the morning. I had friends working at other papers. They would write 1 to 2 stories a week. I wrote 5 in a day. This was my workload every day, right? On average, not all the time, right? And then there was a brief period where, unfortunately, one of our reporters who went off to the Oakland Tribune, one of the bigger papers, and won a Pulitzer, a great guy, he left. So for a period of time, because we weren't able to hire someone immediately, I was the only reporter on staff.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, so it was like really like my friends used to joke it was the Daily Ryan because you'd pick up the paper and like it was just my name from like the top down on the front page.
Writer, lead actor, director.
yeah, exactly. I don't know. I got to stop multitasking. But and I won 3 awards while I was there for the work that I did, local journalism awards. For I did a story about how Steve Jobs forced the sheriff's office to go bust down some reporter's apartment because he had the iPhone 4 prototype. Oh my God, iPhone 4. That was a long time ago. But he had got it in the prototype because someone who worked at Apple had left it at a bar and then had sent it to this reporter, and it was this huge big deal back in the day, back when Gawkers still exist online. And I covered that story, and I got an award for my reporting on that for First Amendment rights and all of this, and what is the powers of a corporation versus the powers of law enforcement, all this. And then I got another award for covering the San Bruno explosion. So I think, I can't remember what the year was, but a pipeline underneath these homes in the San Bruno area blew up, this gas pipe. And at first, everyone thought a plane went down because it's along the flight line of SFO. Like if you take off from SFO, you go right above San Bruno. And so there's this huge plume of smoke. So I drove up there and covered that thing. And I stood like literally, like the fire was here and I'm here. Like I was that close to the fire that was coming out of the ground. And that was a very long day. We did not leave the paper until 2 a.m, I think. And then I did another 6-month investigative piece about a local public servant who had who was not only making $400K running this government agency, but when you added all his bonuses and all of this stuff and raises, and then come to find out that the agency was also paying for his house on a monthly basis. He had like a housing allowance, like all this stuff that was not listed because government officials have to file and report on the salaries that are being made within their agencies. It's sort of like public domain. You can ask for it. You can ask any government agency for their salaries, right? Public servants' salaries are public information. And also their financial filings for politicians, right, are also public, right? So you know what investments and all this stuff that they have. And so one year I got this report, and we would do a yearly salary. Every year we'd do this huge salary thing. And, you know, I got into journalism and writing, so I didn't have to do math, except when I was a reporter, I had to do a lot of math and a lot of spreadsheets. And so I found a discrepancy in the CEO of this agency's salary, and I couldn't account for like this X amount of money. And it took 6 months of digging into public records, making public record requests, interviewing different politicians, figuring out how this guy's salary got inflated over the course of time that he had been there, and all of that. And, you know, that was actually my last big story for the paper. I did not even know I won an award for it because I had left the paper at the time. I got a call from the other reporter, and he goes like, "Hey, I think you're supposed to be at this award ceremony because my name is on the plaque, but it's your story." Because they confused the names.
Oh,
wow. Goes, but it's your story.
Did you get the plaque? Did you get the plaque? Oh, okay.
No, he has the award with his name on it. The newspaper has the right award with my name on it.
Oh, did you get an award? Bruh.
I did not get an award. The paper got to keep the award.
Right. Yeah. The guy who put his name on the project.
I didn't get into it for the awards. Those are nice ego and you know, like validation, but I didn't get into it really for the awards. They're kind of nice to be acknowledged though.
Sure.
But I did leave journalism, and then I started working in tech after that because I wanted to eat and continue to live in the Bay Area. I moved to San Francisco. I moved to San Francisco, you know, while I was working at one tech company, and then that's how I moved to San Francisco out of San Jose. A friend was like, "I have a rent control department. I need a new roommate. You know, you only pay $1,100, which is unheard of
in San Francisco, bro.
Wow.
Yeah.
Apartment, like $2,100 in Noe Valley. And it's rent controlled, and so I lived there for a few years before I moved back to San Diego. Nice. And that's where I was able to fully like embrace my sexuality, and then unfortunately I got into the darker side of that, the gay scene, which is, you know, drugs and meth. And
so can we get into that phase of like, especially, you know, because you kind of, I guess, stepped away from writing because you wanted to put food on the table, and so
I did. I got
making that transition from into the tech world, and then I think that's a great way to transition from you're doing the tech work to Star Trek and that story.
Yeah.
Can we get into that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I went into tech, and I have a lot of friends that I met through it, really good friends, had some great times, but ultimately it was not who I am. The marketing part, right? It's a different beast. And I didn't feel fulfilled creatively. I felt stressed out. I unfortunately worked at one place with a very bad manager who was very much into gaslighting you, making you go through hoops to even get a raise. You know, because I went from being like a senior, you know, marketer to being the director of marketing, and they didn't want to pay me any more money. So I asked for more money, and that's all I did. So, you know, I'm doing more. I'm in charge of the team.
Right.
And then he threw me under the bus, and then I got laid off, which was the beginning of a long depression for me. It was a very long depression. I was living in the city I always wanted to live in. I was having a great time. I was going to all these gay parties and, you know, living it up and still being able to manage my life. Right. But then when the depression hit, there was like this confluence of events. So I got laid off in 2017. I got laid off because my boss, who should not have been my boss, because they put me underneath as the director of marketing underneath the VP of sales, which in most companies would not happen. And I don't know how he finagled this. Yeah, they're two. They're supposed to complement each other, but they're not supposed to. Yeah. Anyway, so he, to save his own ass, basically threw me under the bus and threw marketing under the bus, and started slowly whittling away on marketing. And there's all this, all this back drama that I don't want to get into because I still have good friends that have worked for that company and that have started that company. So I don't want to get into all of the drama. But I got laid off because of it, and I got a measly severance, and then I started freelancing and stuff, and then unemployment. But right after that, I was a power lifter at the time, and I'd done a competition and stuff, and I had torn my ab somehow, and I had a hernia, and there was a piece of body fat that was sticking out from one of my abdominal muscles, which I did not know until one day I was working out, and I was like, "Oh, what's that? Ooh." Oh, gosh. So I stopped and went home, and then I had this huge ball in my stomach, like poking out. I was like, "What is that? That's kind of weird." You're like, you look down and you're like,
yeah, like, oh my God.
Beer belly, but, and so, I went to the emergency or to urgent care, and they're like, "Oh my God, it looks like you have hernia of some kind." And then I had to go get all this stuff. And then I had to have emergency surgery. I had to have emergency surgery because I was going to Europe shortly after that, like within 2 weeks. And it was already a paid for trip. I had paid for it like 6 or 7 months in advance to go to World Pride in Madrid, and then to go on this European tour with all my friends. And I had to have emergency surgery. So that was another event. So I got laid off, this other event. Then I went to go party in Madrid, doing the circuit parties, doing all the circuit party drug, all that stuff. And I never really had any kind of issue with drugs or alcohol or anything like that. I would do them on occasion, right? I would do them when I go to a party, or I would do, I drink. And to this day, I still drink. But I had gotten, because of my untreated depression, and I was unaware. I was aware that I was depressed. I was self-aware that I was depressed. And I was also a little self-aware that I started self-medicating. The self-medicating did not occur until after the trip to Europe. And that was like an entire month I was away. While I was away, my mom had an allergic reaction to a medication that she was taking to address her, I think, eczema.
Eczema, yeah.
Eczema. And I'm a writer. I don't pronounce words as well. I could just write them. Anyway, but, she had taken the medication. She had an allergic reaction, which exacerbated her condition. I was not here for it. So I heard it looked bad. Mm-hmm. Like, they actually literally took her to the burn unit because her skin was just so and wow. She lost her hair and all this stuff. I was unaware of this while I was partying in Europe, right? I was having this great European trip with my friends where we went from Madrid to Paris, from Paris to London. We did World Pride, and then we did London Pride, and then we went to Dublin. We were doing all these great things. And I did not know. And then I get a cryptic message from my dad while we were in London. "Oh, hey, can you call home?" Okay, so I call home. I was like, "Hey, okay, what's going on? All right. Can you come home right after Europe?" I was like, "I guess. Sure." And it was just very cryptic, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. They were not telling me anything. I was getting very, very frustrated. So finally, they said, "Your mom's sick, but she's okay. She's in the hospital." I'm like, "Okay, she's in the hospital. She's fine. Whatever. She's been in the hospital before, right? Nothing serious, right? I just thought it was like, okay, maybe she's, I don't know, something with whatever. And no one would tell me what was going on. So I finally called my friend and go, hey, my mom's in UCSD. Do you think you can swing by and let me know what the hell's going on? He swings by and she's there and she's not doing too well. She's in a medically induced coma.
Oh my God.
I was ready to just jump and go home immediately. But my dad convinced me to just finish it out. She'll be fine. She's, whatever. There's nothing you can do. But I will tell you, the flight back was not fun because we had all gone out the night before and got really trashed. So you're dealing with that. And then they screwed our flight, so there was, kind of scrambling to fix our plane tickets. And then they lose my luggage. And then I have to get a flight back to San Diego. But I get back to San Diego safely with my luggage. And, I'm mad at my dad, mad at my brother. I'm mad at my family because they didn't tell me anything. I go in there and she's got tubes and all this stuff in her. And I just lose it. I just lose it. I break down. I'm crying. I've never seen my mom like this. This is for the first time in my life, it became real that my parents are going to die, right? That there is going to come a day when they're no longer part of my life. I didn't know how to deal with it. I did not know how to. I shrank inside because I had to pretend to be the eldest son who took care of everything. I came back. I cooked for my dad and my brother because they were just eating takeout, and I was just kind of flabbergasted. I go, you can't just keep eating fast food, right? And then dealing with my mom, and then when my mom, my mom finally came out of the coma, she was disorientated. She didn't even know. She thought she had been kidnapped. When you come out of a coma, you don't know who you are or what you are, and you've been dreaming all these different scenarios in your head for the time you're under. And these are things they don't tell you. You're disassociative. You don't know where you are, and, I had to be, and I was very terse with the hospitals, not the nurses. The nurses were great. The doctors I had a problem with because, they came in one day and they were talking, and my mom had just come out of the coma. She's a little she's not completely there yet. And the doctors are over her and they're looking at all this stuff and they're talking about heart, this, that, EKG, blah, blah, blah. And my mom, having worked in the medical field herself as a phlebotomist, she's familiar with all these terms. So she's going to hear these. She's going to get, her mind's going to go. She's going to start thinking about all these things. And and they started walking in. I go, hey, can I have a moment of your time? I said, hey, you got a 70-something-year-old woman in there who's scared out of her mind, who just came out of a coma. Could you have some human decency and at least introduce yourself and say everything's going to be okay? We're going to take care of you. Have some humanity. How can you be doctors and not at least see that the patient there is someone that is human? So I was trying to just keep it together myself. I went back to San Francisco for a time because there was really nothing more I could do. She was going to get physical therapy and all this. I started to get into what is known in the gay community as chemsex, which is where you use a lot of drugs, primarily methamphetamines, and you have sex with as many people as you can, as many men as you can. And which has become more prevalent, or it's always been a thing in the gay community. There's a very nihilistic aspect to the gay community that is not really that is not talked about that much, at least not in polite circles, right? But it's made easier by apps like Grindr and all this other stuff, right? Dating hookup apps have made this a lot easier. And I kind of buried myself in that. That was an escape for me. So that became a problem, right? I thought the thing about developing any sort of addiction or any sort of dependency, let's say, or you lead into abuse. I don't like the word. I use the word addiction, but I don't care for it. It's more of an abuse, right? Because people are going to use drugs. I don't want to. Addiction kind of has a negative connotation, right? Because people are going to continue to use drugs, and people are going to always use drugs, right? I'm a harm reduction proponent. If you're going to use drugs, use them with care. Use them with people you trust. If you're going to drink, the same thing, right? Know which drugs you have a bad relationship with, and for me, that's meth, right? Not everyone. I don't like the AA approach to it because it's stigmatized. I know it's helped a lot of people, friends of mine, but there's a little bit of a stigmatization there. And then there's also a blanket. Well, if you're addicted to one thing, you're addicted to everything. And there's no push or pull or give. And, but I began to lose myself into this world and went to some very dark places, which I won't get into here, but some very dark places. And, and from that, I got into a very bad, toxic relationship, and I wish the other person the best, but we were not any damn good for each other. Let's put it that way. Especially not in the headspace that I was in. And things just progressively became worse. So I started how all people start. I had done it a long time ago in my 20s, you snort it and you're like, oh, I can stay up all night and I can whatever. And then you're like, fine, you leave it alone. And then when I was in San Francisco, adding that sex element brought it to a whole new level, and you're smoking it. And I went from smoking it to shooting it within a short span of a year. Short span. And that's like game over when you're shooting up. Because that's when it really takes hold. And nothing against intravenous drug use. I believe there should be needle exchange programs. I believe there should be safe spaces to use, all that. I don't, there's no segmentation on it. But for me, that was like game over. That was like when it really took root, and I became a different person. I became someone I did not recognize. I became someone because of the abuses through my use. Through the experience of my use, I became very despondent. I hated myself. I found myself repulsive. I found myself undesirable in a lot of ways, worthless in even more ways, to the point I actually tried to take my own life, not once but twice. I tried to OD on purpose because I couldn't take it anymore. I just couldn't. I couldn't live like this anymore. I couldn't. And it got worse. The first time I shut up, I went to a 30-day rehab. I came back and I started using again immediately after. And my friends were trying to insulate me and protect me and try to keep track of me, and it was just out of control. When I first got out of rehab, that's the first time I tried to OD. It did not take. I woke up the next day and just thought nothing of it. The last time I ended up in the ER, because I actually called. There was a part of me, there was a little tiny spark that said I wanted to live. What they don't tell you is it's actually really hard to OD on meth alone. Most people who OD, it's usually laced with either fentanyl or they've done so much that it literally stops their heart. But I had gone on like a bender, like several days. And then I had put so much of it in my body that night, intravenously, that I panicked. I was like, I don't know. And then I thought about, oh my God, I don't want my roommate to find my body. Oh my God, that's going to be really like, oh my God, I can't do this to this poor guy who's just the sweetest man I've ever met in my life. I can't do that to him. He's a nice guy. So, like some sense knocked into me at the 11th hour. And I remember being in the ER, just delusional, paranoid. I want to leave, but they won't let me leave. I have no memory from when I left the ER to when I got back to my apartment and probably scared the crap out of my roommate because I was probably saying some crazy stuff. And then this whole circle of friends conspired to get me out of San Francisco as fast as possible to save my life. And thank God they did. And some of them were friends that I had met through Star Trek. We had my friend Maurice Molyneux and my friend Mark Ferenis. We had met through a mutual love of Star Trek, and we'd all were living in San Francisco, so we'd do this and we'd do projects together and stuff like that. They were part of that group. My other friend Uri also conspired with the same group. They were all texting. Uri actually found me on the street. I had driven away from my apartment, and I guess to finish the job is what I remember in my head with it. I'm gonna get some more, and I'm gonna do this right this time. I'm gonna do it right. I'm not gonna get stopped this time. I'm not gonna stop myself, and I'm gonna do it right. He found me on the street, and all I remember is him yelling at me. I was like, I couldn't, because my brain was so messed up. It was so out of it. It was just, I was not there. There was no faculty at all. And I just remember he spent the day with me and then handed me off to my friend Maurice, and I stayed with Maurice, and they got me on a plane to come home to San Diego. And then that's when I entered the treatment that actually took. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There has been struggles in the last couple of years. You slip and you fall, you get back up. But I'm in a far better place than I was at that time. I'm properly medicated for my depression. I won't lie that it is a struggle. Living with chronic depression is very difficult. There are days when I cannot get out of bed, and I have to be very selective of my stress levels and how involved I get into work projects, because I know that is one of those triggers that exacerbates my depression and then triggers me because of some of previous experiences. But Star Trek literally did save my life. It wasn't for the connections I made from Star Trek and also the gay community, right? My friend Uri and that group was my gay community friends, and Maurice and Mark were my Star Trek friends. And if it wasn't for that, and then Star Trek really kept me alive afterwards, because it was something I clung to. I held on to. I used to carry around this little pin with me during those times because it kind of reminded me of who I wanted to be. It feels silly to say oh, this little 60s science fiction show that everyone's like, oh, it's cheesy, and they wear these bright shirts, and it's all it looks fake and all this stuff, right? Could give me this moral compass or this ethical compass of how I wanted to live my life. And through my friends, both online and offline in the Star Trek community, I was able to get through it. And then also the treatment, I have to give credit to Stepping Stone in San Diego, which is one of, if not, I think the only LGBTQ drug rehabilitation program in existence, because they understand that appeal of drug use and sexuality and how that intersects and how that can and infect you if you allow it. And also my parents. Filipino parents are ride or die for their kids. They are ride or die. They will stand by you through thick, through thin, through everything in between, right? My mom didn't understand any of it. She did not understand any of it, but she put herself in a place to support during it. She'd show up for, when I was at Stepping Stone, they do something called Family Night, which is it's group therapy with everyone's families that come. You know, and my mom did not understand any of this. She did not understand the addiction part. She didn't understand the gay part. She didn't understand the sex part. It was just all new, and she weathered it. And I know it was hard, and I know I've broken their hearts many times during this tumultuous, really, it was a 2-year process. I don't think, like, you know, and amazingly, I have managed through this pandemic without having any sort of huge, like, relapse or any of that. It's just, and I think, you know, if it wasn't for them, my father, my mother, my brother, my cousin Celeste, and then all of my friends, I wouldn't be here today. You know, I wouldn't, you know, I'm lucky that there's a concept in the queer community called chosen family. Because a lot of queers have families that reject them, families they're born into that reject them, and that they're lucky enough to find a new family, a chosen family. I'm lucky that not only do I have the family I was fortunate enough to be birthed into, but I also have several chosen families, one of them being the gay community, my gay chosen family, my queer family, and then also my Star Trek family, my nerd family. And it amazes me that has, I wouldn't be here if it weren't for those three things. I know I'm in a place now that I would not want to commit suicide, but I understand suicide. I understand why people would want to. And, you know, it's the only way I can describe it is, imagine a pain so hard that every day it's like your chest is just constantly like tightening, and it's this knot you cannot, it's so bad that the only way you can possibly see yourself to get out of it is to take your own life. And, you know, they always say, like, well, why didn't that person reach out? When I'm committed to that, I did not want to reach out to anyone. And I fortunately had people who reached out to me. And the only thing I can say on my soapbox in terms of that is, if there's someone that'll say, like, I'm really depressed, or I'm really like this, or really, reach out to them before it's too late, because they're going to get to that point where they won't reach out. Like, you know, we always say, like, oh, reach out to the suicide hotline. This, having been there, when you've made that threshold, when you've crossed that threshold, you're not going to reach out to anyone. So for all those families that worry about someone in their life that might go down that path, reach out before you can interrupt it. And I was fortunate enough that I had someone that interrupted me on the streets of San Francisco that day. And if that had not happened, who knows what would have happened after that.
Jeez. Well, wow. I've been there. I know exactly what you went through, and I just want to tell you, I'm thankful you're here, and I'm thank you for sharing this and telling your story in regards to that situation. It's hard, and I like to tell people too that and with what you're saying, a lot of people, Patrick, you're doing a lot of this, you're doing a lot of that, you seem happy, but I'm kind of like the Hulk, except I'm not angry all the time. I'm actually really depressed all the time, and I kind of overcompensate that depression by doing all the shit that I'm doing right now, just to stay out of that depression. So I know exactly where you're at, my friend. And I just want to tell you from me I'm thankful you're here and you're still fighting that fight. Because I know, and again, that chosen family thing you said is so very real. Me and Tina and Kat met through a convention show circuit here on the East Coast, and we definitely have a show family that we miss so much. But because we don't have conventions and shows right now, like a lot of people, it's very hard right now during this pandemic. Because you kind of build and you have those relationships, but now I haven't seen I haven't seen Tina and Kat in over a year. Because of this, which is insane, and we see each other all the time. But we're all going through it, and I think that's the story, and I'm sure what you've kind of figure out in your healing, that we're all going through it, and we just got to support each other to keep pushing through. But it's real, and you're not part of the ShoPowSho family, so you can add that to your list of families that will always be here for you, bro.
Part of the Mestiza Mafia.
That's right.
M&M's, man, the M&M.
So, wow. But again, thank you for that. We're actually going a lot. This is going to probably be one of our longest episodes. So,
oh man, I can talk. See, that's why my mom had to like give me a butt up, because I can talk.
Yes. And we thank you for it, man. So let's talk about now moving into the future and with what you're wanting to do with Brown Geeks and Avaz Media and some of the other podcasts that you're working on.
Yeah, you know what? Another friend, Amisha, she's the brainchild of Avaz and Brown Geeks. It's her, like, she came up with this, and she asked me last year to just help her get it started, which I did, and what we're hoping with Brown Geeks and Avaz is just to create, like Nerds of Color, a safe space for Brown Geeks. But more than that, we also want to try to, create a means by which to help Hollywood with its diversity and inclusion, right? They always say diversity and inclusion. But what does that mean, right? Like, okay. And we see a lot of that in front of the camera sometimes, not all the time. There's still a lot to be done in terms of Asian American representation along the spectrum. Doesn't matter if you're Japanese or Vietnamese or Filipino or whatever. There's just, it's got a long way to go, right? I mean, you don't see a lot of movies with Asian leading men yet, right? That's not a thing. It's not a very strong thing yet, right? What is it? Daniel Day Kim has gotten his first TV lead role, and he's been in the business for how long? Like 30 some years. Like, that's just insane. That guy's massively talented. He should have had a show like back in like the early aughts, right? So it's just, there's a long way to go. We hopefully will bridge that gap for people behind the scenes, for writers and creators. Yeah. I know and I don't want to get into specifics, because it's like, I don't want to like reveal too much that before we're like ahead of the game, because I'm mostly focused on the creative parts these days with it, and mostly with the podcast. But that is the great hope, is to create this bridge and this place by which, we were starting out with South Asian and Filipino creators, but hopefully for the wide umbrella of Brown Geeks, to have a place that we can hopefully create a stepping stone into Hollywood and into distribution for their work. But right now, primarily I'm focused on just being the showrunner or head writer or executive producer, whatever word you want to use for We Don't Belong Here, which is a 6-episode podcast about a group of characters who are trapped in a forest, and then it takes a twist, a couple of twists, but steeped in like South Asian, Muslim and Filipino mythologies, right? So like in the first episode that I helped write, the Aswang is a great, is the villain, right? Is the great monster in it, right? When my co-creators Sim Duga and then Tamara Saeed came up with they actually originally came up with the idea, and then they brought it to me to help them develop it. It was going to be like these little pockets of, we're going to have like the Aswang, and we're going to have like the Jinn, and we're going to have, the Nalibal, like all these like creatures. And then we started threading this larger story together of how these creatures, who these creatures are, what they represent. And for me, it's like a horror sci-fi suspense, right? I call it Ben's many genres. But it's at its core, it's like, what is it that what does horror, what does the monster represent for the characters themselves? So like for the character Renee, the monster represents a lot of guilt and grief, and a lot of Filipino grief, because he's Filipino, and grief around what the tragedy that befell his mom, which is tied to our monster, which is tied to our larger story, which you'll actually learn more about in episode 4. That is the episode where we learn really more about what the Aswang represents, how it's tied to Renee, how it's tied to the larger story. And that's really where we start to get into our end game for this 6 episodes. So that's primarily where my focus is, and we're hoping if this first season is successful, we'll go on and do a second season. But we're also going to do another podcast in between that, where I'm going to help with and Sim and Tamara are also going to be involved, and Sim's going to be the host of it, where we talk to a lot of brown geeks who are in the industry, so that we can help others learn how others got into the business and what their first time in the business is, so that can help others. Because I know when I was growing up, or when I was a teenager, when I was first getting interested in this stuff, I didn't have a lot of role models. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who were, I still don't, really, to be honest. I still don't know a lot of the, people that are behind the scenes. And I always wanted to be in behind the scenes. I didn't want to be in front of the camera, even though I'm an actor by necessity. So that's primarily what I'm focused on with the Brown Geeks. But I'm also working on other projects outside of that, in terms of, because I'm pre-WGA, right? So I'm hoping one day that I will be WGA, and that I will be working on like a show, or being staffed, or hopefully maybe one day down the road creating my own show, right? Creating my own Star Trek or whatever would be like a feather in my cap. But I'm working on a couple other projects. I'm working on working with another group of writers on an anthology series, a crime anthology series. That we'll be talking about a little bit more down the road here soon. But we've written like 6 episodes of this anthology series between this group of writers, and we came in through the pandemic. We met through the pandemic on Twitter, got together, started writing these episodes, starting working together, collaborating, and it's been it's one of the things that's kept me sane during the pandemic, is working with this group of awesome writers. Not only have I learned a lot from working with them, but I've had a great time creating not only the 2 scripts that I'm involved in. One I've written solo, the other one I'm co-writing with another author or another writer. And then working and getting feedback from the groups. So that's been very fulfilling. I'm also working on another project with a comic book writer that will be about sort of superheroes, and that could kind of tap in my love of like Superman and Batman and comic books, and a little bit about the Daily Planet type of stuff, and bringing my journalism skills to that. But that's still in the early stages. We're still writing the outlines for the scripts for that. And then I have another project that I'm going to start with my friend Vince Alvendia, who's also Filipino American,
Hey,
and also a sailor. He was also a sailor. And he's an artist friend of mine. I've known him since junior. Speaking of my Filipino friends from growing up, him and I are working on a comic book project. And we've been trying to work on a project off and on for the last, I don't know, feels like the last 10 years. Trying to find that right project for the both of us to work on as a writer and then as an artist. But we're working on something that will be sort of like a sci-fi, Western thing. And we just started working on that in the last few weeks. And hopefully we'll get that up within this early part of the year. So just trying to keep myself in a lot of different writing projects and
keep yourself busy.
Really,
it's all about keeping yourself
busy.
Yeah.
You know what? I try to like minimize how busy I am, but I just once I start and once I get an idea, I cannot. It's like an earworm. I can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
I have to work on it. I think that's at it. Like that's my new addiction. Really, is this writing? Right? Is like because to touch back after I had that experience in San Francisco, and I've never been more focused in my writing before that. Like there was some kind of switch that flipped to where there's a new confidence. There was a new confidence. There was a new voice. There was like I knew what I want to say. I knew how I wanted to say it. And I just hope to continue that. That's
there you go.
Where I'm going.
Yeah, you got to turn it into strength. That's kind of what I do and what I've done. And when I talk to other people that are going through it and have been there, and it's you got to pull from that and just keep on building and building and building and building. Because I told myself I'll never get to that point. I live for my daughter. I live for my wife now. I live for my friends. I live for Kat and Tina and you as a guest and just all of our people. We've just got to keep building. There's just so much more beauty and so many stories to tell, man. And I really want to, again, thank you for what you're doing with Brown Geeks and Avaz Media and all these podcasts. You've got a friend in the ShoPowSho, and with me as being part of the Nerds of Color team. I would love to help you build and talk and conversate and be a voice actor too. I'm an actor and I'm a filmmaker as well. So there's some.
We got to
you and I can collaborate in the future.
Hell yeah, anything I can do, man. This has just been mad fun. I love it. Anything I can do to support, likewise. M&M's got to help each other out.
Hell yeah, Mestizo Mafia.
Yeah, so what we like to wrap things up on a fun note, and since I know that your wheelhouse is Star Trek, right? That's your thing.
Yeah, that is my thing. That is my love.
For our nerd check, tell us something you love about Star Trek. It can be obscure, it can be specific. We want to know something you love about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Captain Kirk. That is my captain. That is my hero. That is my boy. But the thing that I love about him, and the thing why I resonate with him, is he's, there's this public conception or this sort of like pop culture idea that he's this frat boy, womanizer. He's not smart, he's kind of like a jock, but that's far from the truth. He's an intellectual. He's well-read. He is very sensitive. He's very atypical of a 60s TV show character. He's highly emotional. He's charming. Because if you look at other shows of that era, like a lot of the leading men were very stoic, very cut off. And he's like, he's expressive, he's animated, he's constantly he's always like involved, but he's also smart. Like he surrounds himself with smart people. He knows he won't know like the nitty-gritty scientific stuff. He's smart enough to know it, but he doesn't. That's why he relies on Spock. But once he gets like Spock, he knows what to do next. But he's also a man who's very self-aware of his faults and his own temper and his own limitations. And that's what I admire about him, because that's what I resonate with. Like he's very aware that he he is always constantly like, am I good enough? He worked hard to get where he's at, but he's always like, am I good enough? Am I going to make a mistake? Right. And I don't see that in any of the other Star Trek captains. And that's what I love about that character. And that's why I resonate with him, because I feel like that. I feel like I constantly like, am I good enough? Will I make a mistake? Can I do this right? Can I do the right thing? And then having that leap of faith to do it and then screw it up massively and then figure out how to fix it later on. And I think that's a lot about what that old show is about, is Captain Kirk screws up and they're fixing it for the rest of the episode.
Beautiful answer.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
love
great.
it.
Oh,
That's great.
yeah.
All right, before we let you go, real quick, what'd you think of Chris Pine though, as the new?
I actually like Chris Pine. He's
Okay.
charming, man. That boy is charming.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was good.
He's good. I think like they tried to write him like as the frat boy version of Kirk at first, and then by the time you get to the last movie, he's the William Shatner Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like an interesting thing that they put him to become the William Shatner Captain Kirk. But man, he's great. I cannot believe like Paramount is just sitting on Chris Pine and not making another Star Trek movie, because he's like become huge. Like he's so fantastic in Wonder Woman.
Oh my God, yeah.
You're just like, dude, why are you guys not making another movie? Like,
Yeah,
this guy's gold.
I thought it was great. Yeah. All right, Ryan, it's been so much fun, and again, you're part of the family. As these other projects come down the line, we'd love to have you come back and talk about it. But let's let everybody know how they can reach out to you online. I'm gonna have it in the description, but if you could just let them know as well.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Ryan T. Riddle. Where if you want to follow me and hear about all my adventures through time, space, and geekery. I'm also on Instagram, Ryan Thomas Riddle, there, although I'm not really that active on Instagram. And then you can see my site, ryanthomasriddle.com, which really needs a refresh, but you can still look. And then browngeeks.com, and then avazmedia.com as well. And then you can find We Don't Belong Here wherever you listen to podcasts.
Love it. Ryan, it was a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your story and
so
all the
much.
ups and downs. And really, we're here for you. We're all a family, and we have to support each other.
I love it. I got a new chosen family.
Yes.
Eminem.
Eminem Mestizo Mafia. Thank you so much, Ryan.
Thank you so much. Had great fun. Have a great time, guys.
All right. Boom. There you go. Ryan Thomas Riddle. Wow. Again, his story is a story that a lot of us have gone through, and some of us haven't gone through, but you have to know, for those that, and I'll put hashtag depression trigger warnings on this video. I've been through it, and it's good to know when you have people that are around you and are supporting you to help you through it. But just know you're not alone, and just talk with somebody. That's just the biggest thing we could say. And speak your truth, and your chosen family will be there to help you and support you.
Mm-hmm. You're never alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked hearing about, the things that he's doing with Representation Matters. That's always so important for us. And it's also great as nerds of color to hear other brown kids getting it in the nerdy game.
Another Mestizo Mafia member, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So he had that traditional story, Navy, which was so familiar.
Tales old as time.
Growing up and then learning more through college. And it's just, it's sad though that there's those times where I think partially, Catholicism, Catholic religion, and then if you're gay, queer, and then having all that put on you when you can't be your true self. So just anybody that's out there struggling and going through it, talk, you have a family, find a chosen family if your family isn't supporting you. But find your truth, because it's so sad to be living in that depression, and we have to be there for each other to support people that are going through that. That's just the biggest thing I could.
It's so important to live your truth.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow, that was a deep one. But Ryan Riddle, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for sharing your story, because it's going to help. It's going to help people that are going through it and not know how to phrase it. And you're showing by virtue of what you're doing that you can make it out the other end, and continue to live and find your passion and find your goals and find your dreams. I'm living that for myself and being here with two lovely ladies in the Ates, because I was there and almost, I wouldn't be here. So in those times you find the bright light and you keep pushing through. So thank you, ladies, for helping be that reason for living.
Thank you for still being here.
Definitely.
Glad
All
to
right.
be here.
Let's tell them how they can reach out to us if they want to have somebody to talk to. I'm ready. So go ahead, ladies. Tell them how they can reach out to you.
Sure, yeah. I'm Kataphorric. You can hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, or TikTok. We've also got the ShoPowSho TikTok going on. If you want a little more behind the scenes action, you can always follow us on Patreon or buy us a coffee.
And I'm Viva Valentina. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at viva.valentina, and on Twitter and chess.com at vivavalentinaxo.
There you go. And I am Kuya P, aka Patrick Michael Strange. You can reach out to me at Strange Since 1977 and at Temple Far East. That's Twitter and IG. Here at the NRW and New Release Wednesday, where nerds rule the world, and the Nerds of Color. And that's on everything. And of course, the ShoPowSho. Always here to lend an ear and be somebody to talk to if you need to. Hit me up all the time, anytime. I'll be there. Because we need to support each other. So, as we always say, because it's the truth, mahakita, we love you, salamat.
Mahakita din.
Hi, I'm Ryan Riddle. I'm a writer and an actor by necessity, and I'm going to be on the ShoPowSho. Hi, I'm Ryan Riddle. I'm a writer and an actor by necessity. And my Filipino heritage is very important to me because it's just who I am. It's just part of who makes up Ryan Riddle. I can't imagine my life without it. And I'm eternally grateful for my mom and her journey to get here from the Philippines.